It's winter, we all need basil for our pizza. In this video, I'm going to show you how I grow this plant. Hi, welcome back to my grow room. My name is Christopher, as always. Today I wanted to make a new video on how to grow basil indoors in the wintertime. I previously did a video, I'll put the link up in the iCard. I did a video where I just showed you the end result. It was a beautiful plant and it just tasted phenomenally. But the thing is that I just talked about how I got there and I never really showed you what I did or what type of soil I used or the lighting situation and tips and tricks around that thing. So what I thought I wanted to do now is to just take the next couple of months and just try to film from beginning to end and see if we can make a video that is a little bit more descriptive and something that you can take inspiration from if you want to grow your herbs indoor in the wintertime. So yeah, let's start with the soil. I use my own soil mix and that's the same soil that I'm using for everything except the hydroponic setup that I have. My banana, my fig tree, all the plants that I have around here, everything here is using the same soil mix and the ingredients are as follows. My base is cocoa coir. It's these cocoa peat blocks that you buy. It's made from shavings from coconuts. It doesn't have any nutrients, but it's a phenomenal base. It's light and fluffy and easy to use. So that's the base. I use one part of that, and the next part I use is compost. This time I'm going to use my own indoor compost. I've been saving compost and making compost in here in the grow room for 4 years now, I think, and I've been using from it all the time, and everything that I'm trimming and pruning and whatever I'm doing, I'm throwing it in a bin and it slowly composts, and yeah, you can have indoor compost. So it's this rich, dark, gooey thing, and it's just pure gold. So what I like to use is this type of indoor compost. The nice thing about this is that I don't have to worry about pests because everything that is in this room is in this one and everything that is in here is in the room already. So it isn't any problem. But I've been using composted manure and I've been using composted garden scraps from a garden center. You just buy these bags and I never really had any big problems with pests. So I think that's just fine to use. I use one part of that. And the last thing that I'm using, this is kind of just something that I sprinkle in. I don't have an exact measure, but maybe a fourth of a part of this. And this is vermiculite. It's used to improve your quality of the soil. And this is perlite. And these are two different types of rocky materials that are heated up and they expand and they get really aerated. So you can use whichever you choose. You could also use both of them. I prefer to use vermiculite. That's just because perlite tends to float to the top. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan. I will experiment more with using perlite in the future, but for now I'm going to stick with vermiculite. And you can choose whichever is the easiest for you to get a hold of. So yeah, it's whichever you can get. This is what the soil mix looks like after I blended everything. Okay, you're gonna need a pot. I'm choosing to grow in this huge pot just because we eat a lot of basil, and if you have a small tiny pot and you just have a couple of plants in it, it's going to be eaten up before it can ever survive and grow. So I choose to grow in a large container. Also make sure that you have drainage holes in the bottom. This is really important because basil really don't like being overwatered. So just make sure that you have good drainage in your pot and you should be just fine. The soil's in the pot now, and before we place the seeds, just make sure that we tap down the soil a little bit, not too hard, but just want to make sure that we make it an even plane for the seeds to be on top of. And the reason for that is, especially in this type of planting, because we're going to plant the basil seeds almost like a microgreen style. We're going to use a ton of seeds just to make sure that we get a thick, lush bush. And that way you will get more basil faster in the growing. So when we tap down the soil, we just make sure that everything is even and it's easier for the seeds to sprout evenly. I'm just gonna grab a bag of basil seeds that I have lying around. I have so many seeds. Let's just start with this and see how far we can take it. Just want to make sure that we get everywhere. And you might say, well, this really isn't the method for for planting the seeds, because every single seed is going to be a plant, and that's true. But the thing is that you will use the basil as it grows, and sometimes it's just easier to have too many and just thin them out when you go along, and that way you can make sure that everything is nice all the way through, and you can harvest anytime. Last step is to just gently put some soil on top, and I'm using very, very little soil on top. And the reason for that is when you're planting so dense, the seeds have a tendency to clump together, and they just lift the whole soil. And that's a bad thing, because so many of the seedlings are going to die from that, because many of them just will be exposed to the light and the air too much, and that's not good for it. So what I'm doing is just gently spraying my soil on top like this, and as you can see, it's just a thin layer, and that's all there is to it. Last thing to do is to just water. I didn't mention, but the thing is that when you're, especially when you're growing in a large pot like this, basil seeds will need water, but the thing is that this container contains too much soil for the seeds in the beginning, so just make sure that you start with soil that is a little bit on the dry side. That's what I did now. And that way, when you water now, the top part will be watered. And as the seeds start to grow and the plants demand more water, it's easier to just backfill with water and make sure that the whole thing gets watered and not stay stagnant with too much water from the beginning. That's all there is to it. If you want to cover this with some plastic, that's just fine. Just make sure that you avoid mold. If it starts to mold, just remove the film and try to keep some aeration going. I'm not going to cover this because I'm just going to make sure that it stays moist on top, and that's really easy when you're growing in a large container like this. So the easiest way to avoid fungus is just keep it open. And also place this pot until it germinates, at least in some place where it's a little bit warm. Okay, the next step is probably going to be sprouting, so I'll see you then. The seed sprouted on day 7, and this is day 9, and you can see it has had a couple of days to green up, and it's really important that you keep the grow light on from this stage. And I would of course suggest that you put the grow light on the exact day that it peeks through the soil. That's important because you don't want tall leggy plants growing there, and they really require the lighting, especially if you have a warm room. After about 2 weeks, the canopy was really dense, and it was like touching rock when you touched it, and it just looked phenomenally. At this stage, you could of course harvest the whole thing as a microgreen, but that's not what we're here for. But you could harvest some of it as a microgreen and just use it and let the rest continue to grow. After about 40 days, the plant was just looking phenomenally, and it was huge. And at this stage, you can trim it back. You could trim it back all the way. Let's say you could just keep 5 centimeters at least have 1 leaf node or 2. I would guess 2 leaf nodes, and then you can just cut it over there, and it will just branch out and continue to grow. So this is a beautiful stage of the plant, and it's completely mature. 7 weeks in, and this is what we have. It has gotten to the stage where I feel like, yeah, it's time to end the video about it. It's been growing for 7 weeks now to the date, and it has been producing a lot of basil. We've been picking and eating from it all the time. And it's just a time where you can just sit back and enjoy, because this is the perfect time for this plant. When it gets older, it's going to be a little bit higher and it's going to start flowering and everything, and it's going to be a constant battle to keep the flowers away. I don't like my basil to flower because it tends to get a little bit bitter once it starts to flower. So when you see those flowers, just snip them off, and yeah, you're all good. So there's a couple of things that I haven't been mentioning in this video for now, and that's watering, fertilizing, and lighting. And these are three really important things, but I just wanted to keep this project going and see what I can learn from it myself. I have been doing this for a few years now, but it's always fun to try to focus on a project and to see what kind of method you are ending up using. And with the watering, I tend to water this, well, I really need to water this every single day. I haven't been doing that, and it has been suffering a little bit from it. There's been days where I've gotten up here and it's gone 2.5 days since the last watering, and the whole plant just looks completely gone. It has, yeah, all the leaves are just hanging down and looking gray and anemic, but you give it some water and it just perks right back up. That's the beautiful thing about basil. They really can take underwatering. So they will just droop and you give them water and they pop back up again almost all the time. But if you overwater this, it's not gonna take too good to that. The leaves are gonna start going yellow and they're gonna fall off. And that happens fast. So many people asked me on my last video why their basil plant are getting yellow leaves and they're falling off and it's just not looking healthy. And my main theory about that is overwatering. That's at least the reason why my basil plants have been turning yellow and dropping leaves. But this one, if you're growing so many plants like I do in a container like this, then it's really hard to get it overwatered, because if you throw in as much as the pot can take, it's still gonna be sucked up by the plant. So yeah, this is a really forgiving setup, and that's one of the reasons why I do it, because I get a huge yield and also it is really hard to mess it up. The fertilizing, I mean, yeah, they're not paying me, but I really just love this product. It's BioBis BioGrow. It's made from algae or beans or something. It is an organic liquid fertilizer, and what I do, I just have this squeeze bottle that I use for hot sauce, and I just use my watering container, a little squirt in there, and that's enough. I fertilize every single time that I water. And for this plant, I would say every single day I would give it half this or 3/4 of this with water. And the fertilizing, it's with liquid organic fertilizers, I haven't found a way to over fertilize yet, and I've been using a lot of this, and the plants will take what they need and it's just going to build the soil. So it's better to over fertilize with this than to under fertilize. They can really take this, so I wouldn't be too concerned about it. And for measuring, I never measure this thing. If I'm growing with inorganics, like for my hydroponic setup, I'm using inorganic chemical fertilizers. And then it's really important to be precise, because if you're over fertilizing, you're gonna burn the plants, and if you're under fertilizing, they're really gonna suffer. So, but with the organic fertilizer, there's just do whatever you feel like, and some plants take better to more fertilizer than others, and yeah, some don't like too much. So yeah, it's just feel your way into it. But I would say a little squirt for every single time. That's at least the way that I do it. When it comes to lighting, I have been using I've been trying different grow lights for this, but the main grow light that I've been using is the Spider Farmer LED. I think it's about 100 watts of lighting power, and it is really, almost too much for this type of plant. I would say I'm currently working on designing and manufacturing, and I already have some prototypes in the works, making my own grow lights, and I'm gonna try to focus on producing something that it would do good in this type of situation for growing basil and other things that don't require these huge panels for growing coffee and guavas and fig trees, bananas and whatnot. So I'm working on that, and I'm going to make some videos about my setup, trying to perfect the way that I could grow basil. I'm gonna try to grow it inside in the house, also in the kitchen, just to see what kind of situation I could get going that would be perfect for this. But for this project, I have been using a 100-watt LED panel, 12 hours off and 12 hours on. And that's the cycle I use for everything up here. It's been working nice for me. Many people are on my last video are complaining about, well, duh, you're using LED grow lights, no wonder you're getting nice plants. And that's true. That's mainly the reason. That I'm not doing any miracle work here. It's just me growing under the conditions that I have. And the thing is that if you want to grow something like this, you're really gonna need some lighting. If you have a south-facing window and you have decent hours of sunlight, it's possible. I'm not gonna say that it won't work. I'm not able to test it because I live in Norway and we don't have sun this time of the year. So I think we're down to half hour of the sun just peeking over the horizon. So yeah, it's it's not for me in the middle of winter, but yeah, it will be possible to grow it in a south-facing window. But if you want to grow, now remember, this is a lot of basil. This isn't just a small plant that you place in some kind of lighting in your kitchen and just have a beautiful basil plant, but you can just pick from it. And like when we go to town, we just pick and just eat chunks of this thing because we love basil. So it's really important for us to just have all we can eat. And if you want to grow something this large, you're gonna have to use grow lights, and that's just a basic fact. So that's what I do with my plant. Okay. I hope this answered some of the questions that I got on my last video, and if you have any questions, just please let me know down in the comments and I'll try to answer them as good as I can. I'm starting to get a hang of growing basil and I think it's fun. It is a nice smelling plant. It grows beautifully, it grows fast, and it's such a good product to have because, yeah, we just love eating it. So this is Christopher saying may the force be with you, and me and my basil are out of here.